Welcome back. In this video I'm going to talk to you about some traditional astrological theories on conception. This video is for intermediate astrologers. So today we're going to talk about some ideas about conception and how you can get the timing of conception for women through their astrology chart. We're also going to be looking at the sun and the moon and its relationship during the course of each month and see some possibilities for finding a good conception date, a likelihood of ovulation. We're also going to be looking at some gender possibilities, and we're going to consider how many conceptions a woman is likely to have in her life. I do need to give a disclaimer already saying that I'm not a health expert and you do need to consult your health consultant, and there's a further disclaimer once we get into the voiceover. These are traditional astrological theories. I will be telling you about the doctor who has been working more deeply on these, and I'm just giving you an overview of the principles of finding out these bits of information that you can from a natal chart. This is one of those videos that I wasn't sure about posting because it does offer some contentious ideas and perhaps at some point may build up false hope, but I am discussing with you, astrologer to astrologer, the principles of how you would calculate these bits of information from an astrology chart. So let's get started. Okay, so traditional astrological theories on conception for intermediate astrologers. First up, I have a disclaimer. So, astrology is to be considered for entertainment purposes only. This is not health advice. Always consult your doctor for your health needs. And I'm putting this disclaimer in because this is a very personal and a tricky part of astrology, that's why. So let's have a look. So we're going to be looking at the sun and the moon, just a bit of an overview on the moon. So in astrology, the moon rules Cancer, the sign of Cancer. It rules the female monthly cycle. It rules lactation and breastfeeding, which is basically the same thing, but lactation is the production of the milk. Milk in general, and the Cancer glyph itself is actually shaped like female breasts. So there's quite a lot going on there that is to do with women, the female cycle, and breastfeeding, which is totally and utterly a woman's thing. So taking a closer look at the 28-day female cycle, in general what happens is on the 14th day ovulation occurs. There are two ovaries that alternate each month, expelling one over each, or maybe two, just depending. At a woman's birth, she has already over 10,000 ovum in the ovaries. They are already in there the day she's born. There is no more. Ova are not replaceable. If we look at it, if you've got a 12-month period of, say, 40 years of fertility, there are 480 potential conception days in a woman's life, which might sound a lot, but still. Typically, there are 2 to 3 fertile days each month when the ovum is ready to be fertilized. The ovary is expelled by the ovary, it moves down the fallopian tubes, reaches the uterus in 2 to 3 days, where typically it would be impregnated there and then nestle into the uterus. This is a quick overview, and of course there's so much more to it than that, but anyway. So I'm going to introduce you to a guy called Dr. Eugen Jonas, and he was a Czechoslovakian gynecologist, psychiatrist, astrologer, and he came up with this theory of sun angle moon. It's otherwise known as SAM, and it's to do with finding fertility dates when the sun is in angle, the angle to the moon. It's understood as well that the ancient astrologers 2,000 years ago were aware of this, but this guy has actually brought it into mainstream, and I certainly encourage you to search him on Google and find more information about this. So what we are doing is how to calculate conception date. So astrologically, we're going to say, well, never mind what the scientists say about how women's bodies works. We're going to look at something entirely different, an astrological theory. So we're going to be looking at the sun-moon relationship. We're going to concern ourselves with the lunar phase. We want to know what the sun-moon aspect is. We want to know about the luminous longitudinal angle, which is its position on the zodiac. We're also going to consider whether the moon is ahead of or behind the sun in the zodiac, and we're going to find when the transit angle is the same as the natal. So this is the process we're going to go through to discover the best days for fertility. And just as a bit of a refresher, there are 8 lunar phases. Where the sun is placed there on the left-hand side, everything is measured from the conjunction to the sun of the moon. So the first 45 degrees, we have the new moon. The next 45 degrees, we have the crescent phase. Then we have the first quarter phase and the gibbous phase. These are all the waxing phases of the moon. And then we get the full moon from 180 degrees onwards. There's the full moon for 45 degrees. Then we have the disseminating phase. We come round to the last quarter phase, and then the last phase is actually the balsamic phase. So there's a lot about lunar phases, but in general, this is what we're talking about. We want to know what is the relationship between the sun and the moon in the woman's chart. So let's have a look at some potential sun-moon aspects. We start with the conjunction at 0 degrees, the sextile is 30, the semi-square is 45, quintiles at 72, squares at 90, trines at 120, sesquiquadrats at 135, biquintiles at 144, quincunxes at 150, and the opposition at 180. So generally these are the aspects, which is a combination of the Ptolemaic, some traditional and some other modern aspects in there. So on this drawing you can see that we've got the 8 phases on the outside, and on the inner wheel we've actually got the aspects. So the conjunction, opposition and squares are in red. They have an orb of 8 degrees, and you can quite clearly see that they cross over phase boundaries. So you could have a sun-moon conjunction in the balsamic phase or a sun-moon conjunction in the new moon phase, and so on. Then we look at the trines, which are in blue, and the sextiles. So the trines have an orb of 8 degrees and the sextiles have an orb of 4 degrees. If you have an opening trine, it will be first quarter. If you have a closing trine, it will be disseminating. If you have an opening sextile, it will be crescent, and if you have a closing sextile, it will be a last quarter. What I'm trying to say here is that you cannot just say, oh, I have sun-moon conjunction and know what the phase is. You have to check, is it balsamic, is it new? If it's in opposition, you need to check, is it gibbous, is it full, and so on. So we're just paying attention to phase and aspect in their relationship regarding the sun and the moon. So we really want to know what is the luminary's longitudinal angle. The angle is the actual geometric angle between the two planets, the sun and the moon. So we are looking for the exact distance between the sun and the moon. In an example chart that I have here, we're going to find the exact distance between the sun and the moon. So the sun is at 1957 Taurus, the moon is at 1700 Scorpio, and the difference between the two is 178 degrees and 3 minutes. Now, you will realize by this time that it's a full moon-ish. It's actually a gibbous, and that's because the moon has not perfected the opposition to the sun at 19 degrees yet. The moon is very close. It's at 178, but it's not hit the 180 degrees yet, so this is still a gibbous phase. However, when this person was born, you would have gone out at night and seen the glory of the almost full moon. So that's what we mean by sun-moon angle. So you get this angle. This is the number we're looking for, 178.03. And in your natal chart, you can calculate your sun-moon angle. We also want to consider, is the moon ahead of or behind the sun? And it does depend where the sun is in the zodiac. If the sun is in this position and you've got the moon in the waxing phase, it will be ahead, and if it's behind the sun, it will be in the waning phase. Let's have another example here. Same chart, we've got the sun and the moon. So in this case, the moon is ahead of the sun because it has not perfected to the full moon. Okay. The transiting longitudinal angle refers to the actual sun-moon relationship right now out there up in the sky, and as the moon continues to move, that transiting longitudinal angle is changing all the time. But on the day that it matches your natal sun-moon longitudinal angle, that is the date that you are likely to expel a nova and within a day or two conceive. What you need to do is to, as an astrologer, look in the ephemeris to find out when will this angle equal your natal angle. And of course you can check in a computer or run an Astrogold chart to find, for instance, the one we were looking at, when the sun-moon is 178 degrees apart, that is the sun-moon angle for that person. So looking forward as an astrologer, you can find the date when this particular angle will be exact. So you might find that it's on the 20th of next month, and the month after that it's going to be on the 19th, because it does slowly slip backwards, and maybe the month after that it'll be on the 18th. And you can predict ahead potential days when a woman is likely to conceive. I know, it's quite mind-blowing, right? So what about gender indicator? Does astrology have an answer for that? Well, actually, yes. Your gender indicator is actually are you going to have a boy or a girl? And the idea is that at the time of the conception, if the moon is in a masculine sign, you are likely to have a boy. And if the moon is in a feminine sign, you are likely to have a girl. The tricky bit here is that the wording at the time of conception, because a woman will conceive not necessarily at the moment of intercourse, but later that day, the next morning, or even the next evening, because her ova is still working its way down to the womb. When conception does occur, and you know what sign the moon is in, if it's a masculine sign, you can anticipate a boy, and if it's in a feminine sign, you can anticipate a girl. There's quite a lot to this as well, and with careful calculations, you can work these things out. So what are the masculine and feminine signs? Just to recap for you, all the masculine signs are the fire and air signs. So it's Aries, Gemini, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius, and Aquarius. So you want to know when the transiting moon is in one of those signs and the angle is the same in your natal chart. That's what that's telling you. And the feminine signs are Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Pisces. And they are the water and earth signs. So when the transiting moon is in a feminine sign at the point of conception, you are likely to get a girl. So let's just have a look at that. In our example chart here, we've got, say this is the transit coming up. This is just an example. The moon here is in Scorpio. Therefore, it is a feminine sign. Therefore, we can anticipate a girl. Now, the moon will spend around 2.5 days in one sign. So timing is critical. Well, that's astrology all the way, isn't it? Timing is critical. And this is the theory behind this. If you know that your angle between the sun and the moon is 178 degrees, which is almost the full moon, as in this example, for instance, every month when you get to the full moon, that is likely to be your fertile time, regardless of how your actual monthly cycle is occurring physically, because we all have heard of people who have fallen pregnant when they were having a period, or falling pregnant when they shouldn't have done because it was supposed to be day 14 that the ova was expelled. This is what we're getting to. The ova are likely to be expelled at this angle point in your cycle. Why don't we test the gender indication theory? You can ask your mother, were you born at 40 weeks? 40 weeks is the typical length of a pregnancy. Were you on time? Was she induced? That means, did they medically intervene and make her deliver by giving her drugs? Were you delivered early? And did you arrive at your expected date? These are just questions that you might want to run past your mother, and then you can go back, because you know your birth date. You can then calculate back 40 weeks from that point, less 2. Okay, so that's one way of testing it, and if you have kids yourself, you can look into that as well. So what about the number of children? Can astrology predict the number of children you're likely to have? So we're looking at the 5th house. This is typically the house that we are concerned with in this video. So the 5th house rules procreation. That means making new life. Therefore, it also rules conception itself, pregnancy in general, childbirth and your experience of it, and children in general. The traditional fertile signs are the water signs of Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. And typically, if you have one of those signs on your 5th house, you are generally considered highly fertile. We are now going to be looking at the procreation planet. This is the planet that rules the sign on the 5th house cusp of the woman's natal chart. Typically, you would consider the traditional ruler, but now and again, I do consider the modern ruler as well, because it's a good yardstick. But back in the day, 2,000 years ago, they only knew up to Saturn, so you would then generally use the traditional ruler. And research has shown that this generally works better than the modern ruler. Anyway, so let's have a look here, this again with our example chart. So the procreation planet here, let's discover what it is. So we look at the 5th house cusp and we find that this is Aquarius. Therefore, Saturn will be the traditional ruler and Uranus will be the modern ruler, because these are the two planets that rule Aquarius. we can see that Saturn and Uranus are there in her chart, and we're now going to look at these a little more closely to see what is their condition. So to find the procreation planet's condition, these are the things you're looking at. You want to know the sign. Does it have good essential dignity? Which planet disposes the procreational planet? You want to consider the house, its accidental dignity. Is it an angular house, succeeding or cadent house? Or is it actually in an intercepted sign within a house? You want to consider that. You want to look at all the aspects to the procreation planet and other considerations, such as, is this also the chart ruler? Is it most elevated? Is it the oriental planet? Is it perhaps an unaspected planet? And is it Cazimi or direct or retrograde? So you would consider all of those to find the condition. What is the condition of this planet in this woman's chart? So with our example here, let's have a look at Saturn as the procreation planet. So Saturn is in Leo. Its dispositor, therefore, is the Sun, because the Sun rules Leo. All good so far. Now Saturn's in the 10th house, so it gets accidental dignity because in the natural wheel, Saturn rules the 10th house, which has got Capricorn. So Saturn is well placed here. Aspects to Saturn is it square the Sun, square the Moon, square Mercury, and sextile Chiron. And actually it's a focal planet in two T-squares there, so there's quite a bit of energy being flowed to this Saturn. So this Saturn is, I would call this an alive and kicking Saturn in this person's chart. And there are no other things of note. But it's well placed, it's high in the chart, in Leo. It's quite well placed Saturn for sure. So taking the same chart, let's have a look at Uranus as the procreational planet. This is now the modern ruler, and as I said before, we would typically just go with the Saturn. However, we're going to analyze Uranus as well, and here we see that Uranus is in Cancer, so its dispositor is the Moon. It's in the 9th house, and the aspects are a trine to the Moon, conjoined Mars, and sextile Mercury. So this planet doesn't have hard aspects, it only has soft, squidgy aspects to it, also from the Moon as well, in Cancer. Quite a lot of influence there coming through. And this other good thing about this particular planet is that Uranus here is the most elevated planet. It is the closest to the midheaven, and I've done another video about that, and I'll put the link just above there on the tag. So let's have a look at the potential number of children that a woman is likely to have. So planets in the 5th house always suggest children. If you've got planets in the 5th house, and maybe you've got 2 or 3, they can very often just suggest the kids you have. You've got a Mars kid, you've got a Venus kid, you've got a Jupiter kid, or what. But a vacant 5th house does not deny children. You look at the 5th house ruler, which is the procreation planet. This is what we're going to. So we're going to find out what is the likelihood of how many children are you likely to have. We do this through a conception count. So first of all, you find the procreation planet, which we have done. Then you have to find how many applying Ptolemaic aspects the procreation planet forms before it leaves the sign it's in the natal chart. Also, you want to note, is it retrograde? Because it will be going backwards making aspects as well as going forwards making aspects. So let's have a look at our 2 options. We've got Saturn as the procreation planet. Let's do a conception count. So Saturn is at 12 degrees. I'm just going to ignore the minutes at this point. And as it moves from 12 degrees to the end of the sign, which is what it said, it will make a sextile to Venus. Venus is at 17. It will square the Moon, which is also at 17 degrees. It will square the Sun at 19 degrees. It will then oppose Pluto at 21 degrees, and finally it will trine Neptune at 25 degrees. So the conception count for this chart is 5. So what are we saying? We are saying that this woman is likely to conceive 5 times. Of course, back in the day when we were living in the fields and there was no contraception, women had a lot of children, and you'll see in some of the charts there is a lot of potential conceptions. Also, this conception does not just include live birth, it also includes conceptions that didn't come to the full term. So with Saturn as a procreation planet, we are potentially suggesting she's going to have 5 kids. So if she's already got 2, there's a potential for 3 more. Yeah. And then if we look at Uranus as the conception planet, again, remember this is our traditional ruler. So we do lean more heavily on Saturn, but we're going to test it anyway so you get a bit of an understanding. What do we have here? Uranus is at 12 degrees as well. It's at the same degree as Saturn, but of course it's in a different sign. So it is going to trine the moon at 17. It will sextile the sun at 19, and it will also square Neptune at 25. So with Uranus, we are only the potential we have is only for 3 conceptions. So you can see that the modern ruler and the traditional ruler are resulting in different answers here. This is often the case. So let's have a look now at stepchildren. Your partner is shown by the 7th house, and his children are shown by the 5th house, children from the 7th house. Therefore, it is your 11th house. Your experience of stepchildren are shown in your 11th house. Stepchildren are children that are not yours, but you perhaps marry some guy and he's already got kids. Those are your stepchildren. Similarly, for adopted children, other people and legal adoption contracts are shown in the 7th house. Therefore, other people's children, legal adopted, are shown in the 5th house from the 7th house in derivative houses, which is therefore also the 11th house. So in general, if you are looking at that sort of thing, you want to be looking at the 11th house. It's not necessarily the 5th house at all. How about some other considerations? Because this is one of those videos that will not resonate with a lot of people and may upset some. So contraception in general. Do not use traditional astrological theories on conception for contraception. I do not recommend that you just take what I've said here and say, oh, okay, I can throw away the pill or whatever and just go with this. Of course, we're living in the modern world. You need to use the best contraception you can get that suits you. Also, I want to talk a little bit about contraception stress, because by the time a woman is in the astrologer's consulting room, she's tried a lot of things. Trying to get pregnant is stressful, which in itself creates issues. Many procedures are available to try, which are medical, and a woman typically will have tried a lot of things before she gets to the astrologer's consulting room. Ideally, she needs to be 12 months hormone-free, because that will still affect her body. If she's never taken the pill, then that's different. And a conception astrologer is not the first person to be consulted, not by a long chalk. Often I hear from people who have been trying to fall pregnant for 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. And sometimes it's just not meant to be. But you don't go to a conception astrologer on day one when you think, oh, I need to fall pregnant, let me consult a conception astrologer. But as an astrologer, which is who you are or whom I'm speaking to, you may come across these questions of some woman coming to visit you and saying, I really need to fall pregnant, can you help me? And these are the things that you would be looking for. So what does a conception astrologer do, and what ought you to be doing as a conception astrologer? You're going to take a brief history, and really you don't need to know all the ins and outs of her medical business, but you do need to know if she has children, if she has been pregnant before and it did not result in a live birth for whatever reason. You don't need to go into all of it, but you need to know for your count how many times this has already occurred, and generally get a feel of what's going on. You would then typically cast the woman's natal chart. Obviously, you need to do that, and you're going to find the exact angle between the sun and the moon and get that exact degree. From this point, typically you would forecast 6 months of conception dates. So once you've got that angle of, say, 178 degrees, you're then going to look forward to next month, or the month after, and then month after, and give your woman 6 months dates ahead where you can say, these are your potential best dates to fall pregnant using traditional astrological conception methods. And that's what you do. You wouldn't do it month after month. You just give her 6 months and she can just kind of get on with it. And typically when you are issuing your 6 month list, you're going to let her know what the gender potential for each one is, because month after month, each alternate month will be different. One will be, the moon will be in a masculine sign, and the next month the moon will be in a feminine sign when it's at her angle. So you would say that perhaps in June your potential is to have a boy, July you're likely to have a girl, and then what comes next, August you're likely to have a boy, and so on. And you would check these dates out specifically before you give your dates to her. When I do this type of work, I typically give her if the moon is going to make the exact angle early in the morning, I would then give her the night before's date and say,
conception is likely to occur during the night of, because this is really when people get down to it. So yeah, that's what a conception astrologer does. So I do have some final thoughts about this whole topic. Conception is very personal and private. Often a woman will come and ask these questions without her partner knowing that she's there. So you have to keep it. Be discreet with all of these things. Not all astrologers will consult on conception issues for many reasons. Maybe you don't feel comfortable doing it, but at least as an astrologer, you need to know how to do it and how it's done. Really, you want to find a specialist conception astrologer who's compassionate and empathetic to the issue of struggling to fall pregnant, because it is a very, as I say, personal and private issue. It's not for everyone, it's not for every astrologer, but a good astrologer will know the theory behind how traditional conception methods are calculated in astrology. Okay then.
So there's quite a bit of information there that may be new to a lot of you. If you found value in this video, do consider subscribing, give me a like, or share it with anyone who would be interested. It does help my channel. I'd be interested to know if you've come across these astrological conception theories before in the past, and if you have any opinions about the matter that we spoke about in this video. I'm Alison Price. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.